Mm. Hey y'all, it's May the 13th, 2016, and I have a video to show to y'all real quick, alright?
But before we get into it, let me remind you, in your public schools, you've been lied to, and lied to, and lied to, and lied to, and manipulated, alright? Understand that. Alright, what they're going to tell you about in your history class, more than anything else, is how black people got enslaved by evil white Americans, and that was the worst thing that happened in history ever, alright? This is being used to manipulate you, alright, to make black people feel inferior. Not only that, there's plenty of slavery still going on in the world, on black people and other kind of people, all sort of people, alright? Not only that, in America there's still slavery going on. It's known as white slavery, otherwise known as, like little kids and girls and stuff being sold like prostitutes, sex slaves. Right, that's absolutely going on right now, but apparently that's not a big deal. Public school doesn't really want to talk about that very much. Alright, and not only that, you got your pop culture and your magazines, your television, subtly hinting at you that maybe pedophilia is alright. I covered this one article a long time ago by the most famous pedophile in the whole world, Todd Nickerson, and he wrote an article or two on Salon.com. You can Google it right now, talking about, hey, I'm a pedophile, but hey, I'm not a monster, stop hating on me. Thing is, Todd Nickerson, yes, you are a monster. Not only that, you're a low-brow monster at that. You know what I'm saying? You're just a little piece of filth and stuff in a big mountain of garbage. Alright? Because this pedophilia, it goes very deep. And we gotta squash out people like Todd Nickerson and anybody talking about, oh, maybe children should be used as sexual objects. I'm talking about Disney. I'm talking about Hollywood in general. You know what I'm saying? That is disgusting. And it's suicidal. And like I said, it goes very deep. And it goes way into the government, way into people in high places. The tippy top of this economic structure, guess what? Pedophiles. Anyway, here's an interview that might clarify it a little bit up for you and stuff.
Conchita Sarnoff has worked with some of the biggest presidential campaigns around the world. She's been a crisis communications advisor to several Fortune 400 companies. She's an investigative journalist who spent years trying to get it out, and it's finally been published. She also focuses in on Jeffrey Epstein, who is at the center of the pedophile island. So Traffic King is the book, and the website is Conchita Sarnoff, Conchita, Sarnoff.com. We'll have her back as an expert to drill more into this, because I don't cover modern slavery to lessen the horrible transatlantic slave trade that killed millions of people, tens of millions of people, enslaved hundreds of millions in the aggregate, or the Arab slave trade that was even bigger, or the Roman slave trade, or the Chinese slave trade. I mean, every culture's done it. Doesn't mean it's good. We as a culture said, this is a bad contract. We don't like this. We're not doing this. But the type of slavery now is kids and women of every race, color, and creed, and the most disadvantaged, people that are also grabbed out of countries and taken to islands as slave labor. Foxconn factories, Apple, the suicide nets. I mean, this is bigger than it was at the peak of slavery here in 1800. And every historian, admits that. So we're so busy trying to ban the word lynch because it scares folks, the Irish name, and brown paper bags, that we're not focusing in on this. But she also heads up an organization that exposes all this, atrvt.org. And, the best way to break this down is she's an investigative reporter for the Daily Beast with her expose behind the pedophile sweetheart deal, published in the Daily Beast, and was submitted for the Pulitzer Prize. There's so much more to go over with her. So in the time we've got, you just take over here and break down the basics, your background, and where this rabbit hole really goes. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Alex, very much for having me on your show. I appreciate it. As you said, this has been a long journey because the establishment, both parties, Republicans and Democrats, have tried to silence the information that is included in the book. The book is more a reportage of not only my journey in the underbelly of human trafficking, but also it exposes the longest-running U.S. federal human trafficking case. Here is a case that started Mr. Jeffrey Epstein, who is a registered level 3 sex offender, was arrested in 2005. He was indicted 2 years later in October 2007 for one count of solicitation of prostitution with a minor. And the incredible thing is that they even identified the victims as prostitutes, or the victim, instead of identifying them as what they are, which is victims, because any girl aged 15, 14, 13, 16, certainly under the age of 18, should not be labeled as a prostitute. She or he should be labeled as a victim, especially when they're up against a grown adult. So here was this case that I stumbled into, having come back from Mexico and almost losing my life. I was threatened by a government official, an agency official, I was going to be lynched if I asked another question, according to the lady who who I was interviewing. And after coming back from that harrowing trip, and of course, after also being offered a bribe not to write this book, I realized that this case was important on different levels. The most important level was the cover-up. I believe, in my opinion, that this cover-up was far greater than the Watergate and the Lewinsky scandal and the Profumo affair combined. I believe this is a very important case because it set precedent. The reason it has set precedent, Alex, is because we have several cases, human trafficking cases in the state of Florida, that have tried to use the Epstein defense as their defense in order not to go to jail and in order to get less time. There's one particular case today. The defendant's name, ironically, is Archangel Michael Hernandez. He's a Hispanic male. He's clearly not rich. And in his defense, his attorney, Joel DeFabio, also from Miami, his defense claimed that because he was a poor Latino and not friendly with our former President Bill Clinton, he is now looking at 8 to 10 years for some of the similar charges that Mr. Epstein was charged with. So here you have a case, how many years later, 2016, going back and using a 2007 defense. And that's why I thought this case, one of the reasons why this case was so important is because it now has set precedent.
Sure, them only giving Epstein a slap on the wrist when he's bringing all these presidents and world leaders out to Pedophile Island with girls as young as, 10 years old. This is creating a precedent to give a slap on the wrist. And listen, I'm a libertarian. I don't approve of a lot of the stuff going on, but if it's consensual and it's adults, leave it alone. I mean, I'm not for drugs, but I'm for decriminalization. I'm not for prostitution, but I'm for decriminalization. But when you involve minors, I want to come down hard on folks. But it seems like with the Catholic Church or Boys Town or Penn State, when you've got high government officials involved, it gets covered up because this is, just a crime too big to be prosecuted. And so it's just amazing. I mean, how deep does this rabbit hole go? For folks that don't know, talk about some of the stuff, how young these children are, some of the numbers we're talking about here, how big this trafficking is.
Okay, well, let's start with, in 2012, Congress reported that there were 300,000 American, that is U.S.-born, children being trafficked in the United States. That's in 2012. The number has now risen to 1 million. The United Nations, claims that there are 22 million children being trafficked worldwide. That's an enormous number, however you slice it. And according to some media reports, it is a business that is worth over $167 billion. That is larger than Google, Nike, and Starbucks combined, and the profits of these three companies combined. So I believe one of the reasons this business has become so enormous and so out of control is because you've got online, pornography, as you might know, Alex, is the largest business online. Child pornography is the second largest business online. Ashton Kutcher, the actor, he created a foundation called wearethorn.org, wearethorn.org, which helps the certain law enforcement agencies with data and metrics. And he's got some incredible data and facts on that website. And the reason I'm promoting it is only because it's been very useful to me and to many NGOs
Sure.
that work in the field. So here we have these numbers that are incredible. And by the way, the only method that we actually even have numbers today is because the victims have been arrested. The police, the local police departments are the first line of defense. So if a child is not arrested, it cannot be identified whether it's a prostitute or a victim or a trafficker or a pimp or a John. Now, the victims prior to I would say within the last 5 years, a lot of things have changed because the police departments have become very educated. And that is one thing that my foundation, our organization, is attempting to do. We are attempting to educate all public schools in the 15,000 school districts on how to identify traffickers online, because that's what's happening today. Traffickers are no longer sitting in a van waiting outside a school or a shopping mall or a movie theater to abduct children and traffic them. No, they're now going online. They're chatting up children. They're befriending them online. So this is
absolutely. And I've got 2 daughters that are young and a son. And, that's why I won't let them on the internet by themselves, is because there are these predators posing in there. And I've seen, just reading the news every day for years, a pattern where it's almost always local cops, not that they're perfect, but on average less corrupt. They're actually busting the pedophiles. And so many times it's national deputy directors of Homeland Security, top FBI. And from my research, there's almost like pedophile clubs that are taking over government, just like the Catholic Church, to protect themselves and operate. And that's why they're trying to federalize local police so that they can't bust up these networks. But what I've said, does that mesh at any level with what your research has found?
Absolutely. Exactly. I believe that's one of the reasons why my book was not published for 7 years. And Random House Mexico killed the book deal in 2014. I signed a book deal in 2009. The more I dug, the more I found out, the more I exposed, the less they wanted to publish the book. I have had 3 agents in the past X number of years. I don't want to expose everything because you could, you know.
No, I understand. You've been blocked, just like Facebook admits they, they block stuff they don't like. I mean, this is the age of stealth censorship.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, so back to this case. So here we have a case where the pedophile, who is a very generous donor to the Democratic Party, was given a slap on the wrist, and he implicated a number of Democrats, and yet he was pardoned during a Republican administration. And I'm sure that those who pardoned him were also part of the Republican establishment. So you've got, both parties who don't really want to expose what went behind the scenes. But when you read the book, you'll understand through the Dershowitz deposition, he even implicated Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz, one of the victims, Virginia Louise Roberts, implicated Professor Dershowitz. And they just settled the case, I believe, on April 8th. And why was this case settled right away? That's another question you'll find out in the book. But, there are many questions that I tried to answer as best as I could, because this rabbit hole, as you call it, is so deep and so wide that even Alice in Wonderland would have had quite a problem trying to dig herself out of it.
Well, Conchita, Sarnoff, stay right there. We're going to come back to break and come right back to you. But I tell you, this rabbit hole goes so deep. It's so frightening to realize the type of monsters we have literally all around us that want control of our society, that want to run our lives, that want to dominate us, that want to be able to shut down the new independent media so this information doesn't come out. But we're going to cover it here on this broadcast. Of course, Bill Clinton and others went to that island that Conchita Sarnoff has been for a decade trying to expose. The last 7 years not having her book published. It's now been published, and we'll give you the details of that when we come back from break, her website, so that you can find that and get a copy of that and get that out to other folks. You may, as a viewer or listener of the show, already know all this, but other folks don't. They just don't realize the level of evil that we're dealing with. Look at the royal family, all the pedophilia in England, the highest government ministers.